Welcome to this deep dive. We're tackling a topic that, unfortunately, well, it's close to home for many of us: bank scams. You've sent in some seriously alarming news articles and YouTube videos all about these scams happening right here in India.
Yeah.
It's enough to make anyone think twice about where they keep their savings.
It's definitely unsettling, especially when you see the names involved. We're not just talking about small, unheard of institutions. This time it's giants like SBI, ICICI, HDFC, and PNB.
Wow,
If even these big names are implicated, it really shakes your faith in the system, doesn't it?
it absolutely does. I
Yeah.
mean, if we can't trust these well-established banks, where are we supposed to keep our hard-earned money safe? But that's exactly why we're here today. We're going to unpack these scams, figure out how they work, and most importantly, arm you with the knowledge to protect yourselves.
That's right. What's striking is the sheer range of scams we're seeing. We've got everything from forged signatures to misleading sales tactics, even a case of an entirely fake SBI branch.
Oh, wow.
It really highlights how widespread and sophisticated these operations have become.
Okay, let's break this down. One of the videos you sent in features a senior citizen who went to his PNB branch for a simple fixed deposit renewal.
Oh.
And get this, he ends up losing a huge chunk of his savings.
Oh, no.
For those unfamiliar, a fixed deposit, or FD, is a type of savings account where you deposit a lump sum for a fixed period at a predetermined interest rate. It's generally considered a safe and stable investment option, especially for senior citizens. But in this case, it turned into a nightmare. How did this even happen?
This case really exposes how scammers prey on trust and lack of financial literacy, especially among older individuals who might not be as familiar with the latest financial products and jargon. The PNB employee in this case, who may or may not have been legitimate, presented a complex insurance policy as a better yielding FD, using confusing terms and exploiting the customer's lack of understanding.
And the truly heartbreaking part is that this senior citizen explicitly mentions how much he trusted the bank. He said, "We've been PNB customers for years. We never thought something like this could happen here." No, see. It's a stark reminder that blind trust, even in seemingly reputable institutions, can have devastating consequences.
Absolutely. And this case highlights a broader issue. Banks often use complex financial jargon and misleading language to confuse customers, particularly seniors, making them more susceptible to these types of scams.
It's almost like they're deliberately making things difficult to understand, which is incredibly worrying. And it's not just PNB. On another video you sent in, detailed a family who lost a staggering 80 lakh rupees to ICICI agents who missold them multiple policies without properly explaining the terms and conditions.
Right, and this brings us to another key tactic used in these scams: mis-selling. This is where bank employees, driven by sales targets and incentives, push products that might not be in the best interest of the customer. Often they'll downplay the risks or even outright misrepresent the features of the product to make a sale.
In this ICICI case, the family thought they were investing in safe, long-term savings plans. Instead, they ended up with a bunch of complex insurance policies they didn't understand and couldn't afford. And what's even more alarming is that the family claims these policies were sold to them without their full knowledge or consent.
That's a common thread we see in these scams. The victims often say they felt pressured or misled into signing documents without fully understanding what they were agreeing to. This is why it's so important to scrutinize every document, ask questions, and seek independent advice before signing anything, especially when it comes to financial products.
It's almost like we need a law degree just to open a simple savings account these days. But speaking of things being more complicated than they should be, one of the articles you sent in really caught my eye. It's about a retired engineer who returned to India after years abroad, trusted a bank employee at HDFC to put his life savings in FDs, and bam, it ended up in an insurance policy he didn't even know about.
This case is a stark reminder that even seemingly straightforward transactions can be manipulated. We tend to assume that if we're dealing with a well-known bank and a seemingly helpful employee, our money is safe. But this engineer's experience shows that that's not always the case.
He specifically mentioned that he didn't have a strong background in banking jargon, which made him more vulnerable to these tactics. It really makes you wonder how many people out there are falling victim to these scams simply because they don't understand the complexities of the financial world.
You're absolutely right. Financial literacy plays a huge role in protecting yourself from scams. Understanding basic financial concepts, knowing your rights as a customer, and being able to spot red flags are essential skills in today's world.
So it seems like we're facing a perfect storm here.
Yeah.
Complex financial products, aggressive sales tactics, and a lack of financial literacy among the general public. It's no wonder these scams are becoming so prevalent. But where do we go from here? If even big, reputable banks like HDFC are implicated, how can we as individuals trust anyone with our savings?
That's a valid concern, and one that we'll address in the next part of our deep dive. While the situation may seem bleak, remember, knowledge is power. By understanding the tactics used and being aware of the red flags, we can significantly reduce our risk.
Welcome back to our deep dive into bank scams. In the previous segment, we explored some truly unsettling cases, highlighting how even seasoned individuals can fall victim to these schemes. But it's not all doom and gloom. Now, we're going to shift gears and talk about how to protect yourselves. Because knowledge, as they say, is power.
That's absolutely right. And one of the most powerful tools you have is awareness. Understanding the common tactics used by scammers can help you spot the red flags and avoid becoming a victim. So let's start by dissecting some of these tactics, shall we?
Sounds good to me. I mean, it's one thing to say be careful, but it's another to actually know what to look out for. So what are some of the telltale signs that something fishy might be going on?
Well, remember that case with the senior citizen and the misleading FD? That highlights a classic tactic, using complex jargon and confusing language to bewilder customers, especially those who might not be as financially savvy.
Right.
It's a way to make them feel overwhelmed and more likely to just sign whatever's put in front of them.
It's almost like they're deliberately trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, which is just plain wrong.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway here?
Always ask for clarification if you don't understand something. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you feel like you should already know the answer.
Right.
It's your money, your future. You have every right to understand where it's going and how it's being invested. And never, ever sign anything you don't fully comprehend. It's better to err on the side of caution and seek independent advice if needed.
That's such an important point. It's easy to feel pressured in the moment, especially if you're dealing with someone who seems knowledgeable and authoritative. But remember, even those with fancy titles and impressive jargon can have ulterior motives.
Absolutely. And speaking of motives, let's not forget about those sales targets. Bank employees, even those working for reputable institutions, often have immense pressure to meet sales goals. This can create kind of a perverse incentive to prioritize sales over customer well-being.
Like in that ICICI case where the family was sold multiple policies they clearly didn't need or understand, it's a reminder that even if someone seems helpful and trustworthy, their primary goal might not be to act in your best interest.
Exactly. And this is where being aware of common mis-selling tactics comes in handy. For instance, be wary of unsolicited offers that sound too good to be true. If someone is promising you unbelievably high returns with minimal risk, chances are it's a scam.
Yes, the classic, if it sounds too good to be true, rule. It's a golden rule for a reason, especially when it comes to finances. So let's say you get a call or an email about a fantastic investment opportunity. What are some red flags that should make you think twice?
First and foremost, pay attention to the source. Did this offer come from a legitimate financial institution that you have an existing relationship with, or is it from some random company you've never heard of? Always verify the legitimacy of any financial institution before sharing personal information or making any transactions.
And let's not forget about those phishing attempts. Scammers are getting increasingly sophisticated with their tactics, sending out official-looking emails and even creating fake websites that mimic those of real banks.
Right. Be extra cautious about clicking on links or opening attachments from unknown senders. These could contain malware designed to steal your personal information or give scammers access to your accounts.
So it's all about being vigilant and skeptical, especially online. Don't just blindly trust anything that comes your way. Verify, verify, verify. But what about our mobile and online banking? These platforms are incredibly convenient, but they also seem like prime targets for scammers. What steps can we take to protect ourselves in the digital realm?
That's a great question. Security in the digital world is paramount, especially when it comes to our finances. One of the most basic yet effective steps you can take is to create strong, unique passwords for all your online banking accounts. And I can't stress this enough. Don't use the same password for multiple accounts.
Right, because if one account gets compromised, you don't want a domino effect where all your accounts are at risk. So strong passwords, different for each account. Got it. What else?
Whenever possible, enable two-factor authentication. This adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to enter a unique code, usually sent to your phone or email, in addition to your password when logging in.
So even if someone manages to steal your password, they still can't access your account without that second authentication factor. It's like having double the protection. And let's not forget about those pesky OTPs or one-time passwords.
Absolutely. Those OTPs are crucial for securing online transactions. Remember, a legitimate bank will never ask you for your OTP over the phone, via email, or through text messages. If someone is requesting your OTP, it's a huge red flag.
It's like the golden rule of OTPs. Never share them with anyone, no matter what. But beyond passwords and authentication, what about the devices we use for online banking? Our phones, laptops, tablets. Are there any security measures we should be taking there?
Definitely. Keeping your devices secure is just as important as securing your accounts. Make sure your operating systems and antivirus software are up to date. These updates often include security patches that address known vulnerabilities, making it harder for scammers to exploit them.
So it's not just about setting it and forgetting it. We need to be proactive about updating our devices and software regularly. What about public Wi-Fi networks? Those always make me a bit nervous when it comes to sensitive information.
You're right to be cautious about public Wi-Fi. These networks are often unsecured, meaning your data can be intercepted by anyone with the right tools. If you must use public Wi-Fi for banking, make sure you're using a virtual private network, or VPN. A VPN encrypts your internet traffic, making it much harder for snoopers to access your data.
So it's like having a secret tunnel for your data to travel through, keeping it safe from prying eyes. And I've heard about these mobile banking apps that have additional security features, like biometric logins using fingerprint or facial recognition. Are those worth using?
Absolutely. Biometric logins provide an extra layer of security because they're much harder to forge than traditional passwords. So if your bank offers this feature, definitely consider using it.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here, from understanding common scam tactics to implementing security measures for both online and mobile banking. It's almost like a crash course in digital self-defense. But let's say, despite all our best efforts, the worst happens and we fall victim to a scam. What then? What are the steps we should take to mitigate the damage and hopefully recover our funds?
That's the million-dollar question and something we'll delve into in the next and final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into bank scams. We've explored the unsettling reality of these scams, learned to recognize red flags, and even armed ourselves with digital security tips. But let's face it, even the most vigilant among us can sometimes fall victim to these sophisticated schemes. So what happens if, despite our best efforts, we find ourselves in that unfortunate situation?
It's a crucial question, and the steps you take immediately after realizing you've been scammed can significantly impact your chances of recovering your funds and mitigating the damage.
So let's say you've discovered unauthorized transactions on your account, or you realize you've been tricked into sharing sensitive information. What's the first thing you should do?
The most crucial step is to immediately report the scam to your bank. Contact their customer service hotline or visit your branch in person and provide them with all the details of the incident.
And I imagine documentation is key here, having records of transactions, communication with the fraudulent party, basically anything that can support your claim.
Precisely. The more evidence you have, the stronger your case will be. While you're reporting it to your bank, it's also essential to file a complaint with the relevant authorities. This could be the police, the cybercrime cell, or even specialized agencies that deal with financial fraud, depending on the nature of the scam.
It sounds like we're talking about a two-pronged approach: informing your bank and filing a formal complaint with the authorities. What's the rationale behind involving both parties?
Reporting to your bank allows them to initiate their internal investigation and take steps to secure your account, potentially preventing further losses. Filing a police complaint creates an official record of the crime and initiates a legal process, which can be crucial for pursuing justice and potentially recovering your funds.
And what about those regulatory bodies we discussed earlier, the ones responsible for overseeing financial institutions and protecting consumer rights? Do they play a role in this process?
Absolutely. Filing a complaint with the RBI, the Banking Ombudsman, or even IRDA if it involves insurance products can be incredibly impactful. These institutions have the authority to investigate complaints and take action against banks found guilty of malpractice or negligence.
So it's like adding another layer of pressure and accountability. But honestly, looking at some of the cases we discussed earlier, it doesn't seem like this system is always very effective. Many victims struggle for years to get even basic acknowledgement of their complaints, let alone justice.
You're right. The system is far from perfect, and there are definitely gaps in enforcement and accountability. But that doesn't mean we should give up on seeking justice. Persistence is key. Document every interaction, every response, every delay. This meticulous record-keeping can help build a strong case if you need to escalate the matter.
So it's about being our own advocates, pushing for answers and not accepting silence or inaction. It can feel like David versus Goliath, especially when you're up against large financial institutions. But it's important to remember that we have rights and we have resources to help us fight back.
Exactly. And beyond individual efforts, there's a crucial need for systemic change. Stronger regulations, stricter enforcement, and a culture of transparency and accountability within financial institutions are essential to truly tackle this problem at its root.
It's a reminder that this isn't just about individual responsibility. It's about holding those in power accountable for creating a safe and trustworthy financial environment for everyone.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the question we want to leave you with today. What can we, as individuals and as a society, do to demand better from our financial institutions? How can we ensure that our trust isn't exploited and our hard-earned money is truly protected?
It's a powerful thought to end on. It's a call to action, to be informed, be vigilant, and to never stop demanding better. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of bank scams. We hope the knowledge you've gained empowers you to navigate the financial landscape with confidence and security. Remember, your financial well-being is worth fighting for.